In 1911, giant bones were found in Lovelock Cave. Large human skulls and skeletons that measured between 7 and 8 feet in height, which for ancient man would have been rather significant.
Deep within the restricted, sun-scorched labyrinth of the Grand Canyon lies a shadow that history has tried to erase. In the spring of 1909, a heavily funded expedition reportedly breached a massive, hand-carved citadel buried miles beneath the stone, unearthing advanced metallurgy, Eastern inscriptions, and the preserved remains of an ancient, towering dynasty. The architectural evidence points to a forgotten global empire, hidden in plain sight.
Were there giants in North America? There are over 125 historical accounts of giants being excavated from burial mounds.
What follows is the documented trail of a discovery that changes everything: the April 1909 disclosure. The narrative of this subterranean empire emerged not from whispered folklore, but from a highly detailed public disclosure published on the front page of the Arizona Gazette on April 5, 1909. The account was presented with the methodical precision of an official expedition debrief, introducing two primary figures whose names would become permanently intertwined with the mystery of the canyon: G.E. Kincaid, an intrepid explorer and field archaeologist, and Professor S.A. Jordan, a high-ranking researcher reportedly backed by the nation's most prestigious institutional resources. According to the document, Kincaid was navigating the perilous rapids of the Colorado River, traveling downstream from Green River, Wyoming, in a solo bid to chart the canyon's unmapped geological formations and locate mineral deposits. It was during this grueling river journey, roughly 40 miles upriver from the El Tovar Crystal Canyon, that Kincaid noticed peculiar, unnatural markings etched high upon the sheer sediment walls of the canyon. Sediment that had been carved by water over millions of years, yet here showed the distinct straight lines of intelligent engineering. Upon scaling the treacherous, near-vertical cliff face rising nearly 2,000 feet above the riverbed, Kincaid discovered a hidden shelf concealed by the natural contours of the canyon walls. Hidden behind a dense screen of desert brush lay the mouth of a massive cave, its entrance intentionally squared and expertly leveled, standing as a stark contrast to the chaotic, jagged geology surrounding it. The entrance was of such monumental scale that it immediately suggested a purpose far greater than a mere mining shaft or temporary shelter. Stepping past the threshold, Kincaid found himself standing within a colossal, hand-hewn tunnel that stretched straight into the dark interior of the earth, completely shielded from the blistering Arizona sun. Recognizing the immense historical and logistical weight of what he had stumbled upon, Kincaid immediately paused his solo journey to secure proper equipment and contact Professor Jordan, who quickly arrived with a full team of specialized excavators, engineers, and surveyors to systematically catalog the interior. The sheer mechanics of the entry point provided the first concrete clues that this was a permanent, highly secure stronghold. The main corridor measured roughly 12 feet in width, narrowing perfectly as it pushed deeper into the limestone strata. The walls were not rough or uneven. They had been meticulously chiseled and then smoothed, polished to a finish that reflected the light of the expedition's lamps. The engineering required to remove thousands of tons of solid rock from a vertical cliff face, high above a raging river, pointed to a civilization possessing highly advanced tools and an extraordinary understanding of structural load management. As the team pushed forward, they noted that the air within the tunnel remained remarkably dry, cool, and perfectly breathable, a mechanical feat achieved by a sophisticated system of radiating air shafts that punctured the canyon side at precise, calculated angles. This was an underground city designed to sustain human life on a massive scale, completely isolated from the outside world. As Professor Jordan's team advanced past the first 100 feet of the main corridor, the singular tunnel fractured into a complex, sprawling grid of intersecting hallways, chambers, and massive rooms arranged in a precise, radial pattern, resembling the spokes of a wheel. This layout was not accidental. It allowed a central command structure to access hundreds of localized chambers with maximum efficiency. The main passage eventually terminated at a colossal circular rotunda that served as the heart of the entire complex. From this central chamber, dozens of smaller passages branched out at perfect right angles, leading to sleeping quarters, storage facilities, and workshops. The sheer scale of the space was overwhelming. The survey team estimated that the main grid extended for several miles underground, providing enough physical space to easily house upwards of 50,000 individuals. Every square foot of this subterranean citadel spoke to a highly organized, disciplined society that had executed a master architectural plan beneath the American Southwest. But to get how such a structure could remain hidden, one must first look at the unique, impenetrable geology of the canyon itself. Subterranean architecture and forbidden basements. One must analyze the precise architectural dynamics described in the archival records to understand how an entire civilization could carve a sprawling, multi-mile empire into the living rock of the American Southwest. The structural layout uncovered by Jordan and Kincaid was not a simple network of natural fissures or primitive caves. It was an advanced, engineered subterranean city. The primary architectural footprint consisted of a massive central rotunda from which hundreds of perfectly straight, level hallways radiated like the spokes of a wagon wheel. The execution of this layout required an extraordinary understanding of subterranean structural engineering, load-bearing dynamics, and rock mechanics. Deep within the earth, the pressure exerted by thousands of feet of overlying limestone and sandstone creates immense tectonic stress. Without highly precise calculations regarding chamber width, pillar placement, and arch geometry, a cavern system of this magnitude would suffer catastrophic structural failure. Yet, the architectural records indicate that the ceilings of these massive halls were consistently cut into perfect, smoothed arches, a geometric form famously optimized for distributing immense vertical weight downward into the solid rock walls. This level of architectural sophistication is not entirely unprecedented in the broader context of global human history. To establish the engineering plausibility of such a complex, investigators often look to verified ancient rock-cut cities found elsewhere in the world. In the Cappadocia region of Turkey, the ancient underground city of Derinkuyu descends over 200 feet into the volcanic tuff, featuring a highly sophisticated system of multi-level dwellings, ventilation shafts, and massive rolling stone doors capable of sheltering up to 20,000 people. Similarly, the ancient city of Petra in Jordan showcases the masterful ability of early builders to hollow out monumental, precise facades and internal chambers directly from steep vertical sandstone cliffs. The structural descriptions of the Grand Canyon Citadel mirror these old-world engineering marvels with chilling accuracy, suggesting that the builders possessed a shared mastery over rock-cut architecture. Beyond the sheer geometry of the corridors, the internal environmental engineering within the canyon complex points to a highly advanced life support design. In any deep underground environment, the accumulation of deadly gases, such as carbon dioxide or radon, combined with a total lack of natural airflow, presents an immediate hazard to long-term human habitation. The builders of the Grand Canyon Citadel solved this complex thermodynamic problem by cutting a series of narrow, strategic air shafts that ran obliquely from the deep internal rotunda out to the sheer face of the canyon wall. By utilizing the natural pressure differentials between the deep, cool interior of the Earth and the hot, sun-exposed exterior of the canyon cliffs, these shafts created a continuous, self-sustaining convection current. This passive ventilation system ensured a constant supply of fresh air throughout the entire grid, keeping the internal environment exceptionally dry and hovering at a stable, cool temperature. This hyper-dry, stable climate served a vital secondary purpose: long-term preservation. The archival logs describe dedicated storage facilities, referred to as forbidden basements, located in the lower, most secure tiers of the complex. Within these chambers, engineers discovered an architectural layout optimized entirely for food security and asset protection. Massive granaries and storage bins were carved out of the solid stone, designed with sloped floors to facilitate the rotation of dry goods and grains. The total absence of humidity within these deep rock vaults meant that organic materials, seeds, textiles, and delicate records could be preserved for centuries without succumbing to rot, mold, or insect infestation. The layout of these lower basements indicates that the citadel was not merely a temporary military bunker, but a highly organized administrative capital designed to withstand prolonged periods of environmental crisis, warfare, or climate shifts on the surface. As the exploration team ventured further into these climate-controlled vaults, they began to encounter specialized workshop sectors that completely redefined the technological timeline of the ancient Americas. In these designated zones, the architecture shifted from residential quarters to industrial spaces, featuring heavy stone benches, ventilation flues designed to channel intense heat away from the living quarters, and localized drainage systems. These workshops were the manufacturing hubs of the empire, where master craftsmen processed raw materials gathered from the mineral-rich veins of the surrounding canyon. The presence of these specialized industrial sectors proved that the society had transitioned far beyond a basic survivalist existence. They possessed a highly stratified workforce, capable of executing large-scale industrial tasks deep beneath the Earth's surface. If the architecture challenges our understanding of ancient engineering, the artifacts found within the chambers completely rewrite our maps of early global migration, the metallurgical and hieroglyphic anomalies. The industrial workshops discovered within the lower basements of the Grand Canyon Citadel contained physical evidence that directly challenges conventional timelines of early global commerce and technological evolution. Among the most significant finds cataloged by Professor Jordan's team were advanced metallurgical workshops, complete with heavy stone crucibles, smelting hearths, and an extensive array of finished metal tools and weapons. Most notable was the presence of hardened copper and bronze implements, including swords, spears, and chisels that exhibited a level of structural integrity and edge retention capabilities typically associated with the highly advanced smithing traditions of the ancient Mediterranean and Near East. To find such specialized metallurgical processing sites deep within the American Southwest indicates that this subterranean society possessed a sophisticated understanding of metallurgy, alloying, and high-temperature furnace management. They had successfully mastered the complex chemical transition from raw mineral ores to high-density structural tools. The presence of these advanced metal artifacts raises profound questions regarding the sourcing of raw materials. While the Grand Canyon region contains localized mineral deposits, the sheer volume of high-purity copper tools described in the expedition records points toward extensive, continent-spanning trade networks. Geologists and independent researchers frequently draw correlations between these artifacts and the famous, highly anomalous prehistoric copper mines found around the Lake Superior Basin, particularly in Michigan's Upper Peninsula and Isle Royale. In those northern regions, thousands of ancient open-pit mines exist where an estimated hundreds of millions of pounds of high-grade, pure, native copper were systematically extracted during antiquity by an unidentified civilization. The physical signatures of this missing copper have baffled traditional researchers for generations, as very little of it appears in the standard archaeological record of local North American tribes. The discovery of heavy copper manufacturing hubs deep within the Grand Canyon suggests a logical destination for these northern resources, indicating that the Canyon Citadel served as a major central distribution and processing node for a vast, intercontinental commodity network. Compounding the mystery of this advanced metallurgy was the discovery of a complex, highly stylized writing system chiseled into the stone tablets, lintels, and chamber walls throughout the central rotunda. According to the original field reports, these inscriptions were not primitive pictographs or local petroglyphs, but a mature phonetic script that bore a striking, undeniable resemblance to the ancient hieroglyphic writing systems of Egypt, Phoenicia, and classical Tibet. The characters were arranged in precise vertical columns and horizontal bands, displaying a rigid grammatical structure and an advanced mastery of symbolic language. This script was utilized to record administrative logs, historical lineages, and structural blueprints, proving that the citizens of this underground empire operated under a unified, highly organized bureaucratic system that possessed a shared intellectual heritage with the great literary civilizations of the Old World. The presence of an Eastern-style hieroglyphic script in the heart of the North American continent strongly supports long-standing pre-Columbian transoceanic contact theories. Mainstream maritime history often treats the oceans as impassable barriers prior to the modern era, but a growing body of nautical engineering research suggests that ancient Phoenician, Egyptian, and East Asian vessels were fully capable of navigating global open seas. By utilizing the predictable equatorial currents and prevailing trade winds, ancient mariners could cross the Atlantic and Pacific Oceans with remarkable efficiency. Once arriving at the Gulf of Mexico or the Gulf of California, these early explorers could easily navigate inland by following major river arteries, such as the Colorado River system, which cuts directly through the heart of the Southwest. The Grand Canyon, with its deep natural defensive structures and vast mineral wealth, would have provided the ultimate inland base of operations for a global maritime empire, seeking to establish a permanent, secure foothold within the interior of the American continent. Furthermore, the integration of these foreign linguistic and technological elements within the canyon complex indicates a highly successful synthesis of cultures rather than a brief, transient outpost. The glazed pottery, sophisticated textiles, and ornamental beadwork found alongside the hieroglyphic tablets demonstrated a refined artistic tradition that blended Eastern aesthetic sensibilities with local raw materials. This cultural convergence suggests that the citadel was a thriving, long-lived metropolis where global trade networks intersected, allowed for the free exchange of ideas, technologies, and administrative practices. The builders of this complex had managed to establish a highly resilient, isolated civilization that maintained a sophisticated awareness of global geography, science, and literature, completely shielded from the volatile political shifts occurring across the oceans. Could an ancient civilization from across the sea have navigated deep into the American interior, or did they encounter an existing indigenous population of unprecedented scale? The osteological evidence, profiles of the ancients. The architectural scale and technological sophistication of the Grand Canyon Citadel found their ultimate correlation in the physical remains discovered within the deep, subterranean burial vaults. As Professor Jordan's team pushed past the residential grid and entered the lower western tiers of the complex, they breached a series of massive, airtight catacombs carved directly into the bedrock. Within these stone-cut sepulchres sat hundreds of perfectly preserved mummies, resting on stone shelves and within carved sarcophagi. Unlike the desiccated remains typically found in shallow desert graves throughout the Southwest, these individuals had been preserved using a highly advanced, sophisticated embalming process. The bodies were wrapped in heavy, resin-treated linen shrouds that bore a striking technical resemblance to the mummification methods practiced along the Nile River Valley. This intricate process protected the tissue from decay, allowing the physical characteristics of this ancient population to survive across millennia. The most astonishing feature of these remains, however, was their extraordinary physical stature. According to the precise measurements recorded in the field logs, the adult male skeletons within these catacombs consistently measured between 8 and 10 feet in height. These were not isolated instances of biological gigantism, which typically manifests as a rare, physically debilitating genetic anomaly. Rather, the uniform skeletal density, facial structures, and robust joint proportions indicated a distinct, naturally tall human population that possessed immense physical strength and structural symmetry. The skulls exhibited prominent brow ridges, elongated cranial vaults, and powerful jawlines with complete sets of exceptionally large, well-developed teeth. This uniform morphology proved that the builders of the citadel belonged to a unique lineage whose physical profiles radically departed from the average stature of modern populations. To establish the broader historical context of these massive physical remains, independent investigators frequently cross-reference the Grand Canyon discoveries with the extensive records of unusual skeletal anomalies found throughout North American earthworks during the 19th and early 20th centuries. Throughout the Ohio River Valley, the Mississippi River Basin, and the mound complexes of the Midwest, early researchers from various historical societies documented the excavation of large burial mounds containing skeletons of immense proportions. Documents preserved in local historical archives and early county histories frequently detailed the unearthing of individuals measuring between 7 and 9 feet tall, often buried with advanced copper armor, mica breastplates, and highly stylized religious artifacts. These widespread discoveries indicate that a distinct tall population was once active across the entire expanse of the North American continent, establishing highly organized ceremonial networks long before the rise of modern historical records. The preservation of the Grand Canyon mummies was significantly aided by the unique, hyper-dry microclimate generated within the deep limestone strata. Because the subterranean city utilized an advanced passive ventilation system, the relative humidity within the burial catacombs remained locked at near zero levels. This total absence of moisture, combined with the stable, cool thermal properties of the deep rock, halted the natural biological processes of decomposition. Furthermore, the application of mineral-rich resins and aromatic botanical compounds to the linen wrappings served as a powerful natural antimicrobial barrier. When the expedition team opened the sealed stone doors of the western vaults, they noted a distinct, pleasant odor of cedar and pitch, indicating that the chemical compounds used by these ancient embalmers had successfully maintained their structural integrity over thousands of years of isolation. The presence of such a distinct, imposing population deep within the canyon walls provides a compelling explanation for the sheer physical scale of the architecture itself. The 12-foot-wide corridors, the massive vaulted ceilings of the central rotunda, and the monumental proportions of the main entry gates were not merely aesthetic choices designed to intimidate. They were functional, ergonomic necessities built to accommodate a population of extraordinary physical dimensions. Every doorway, stone bench, and workshop table within the complex was scaled to a physical standard that matched the inhabitants of the western catacombs. This seamless integration of human biology and large-scale structural engineering demonstrated that the citadel was a custom-built environment, designed from its inception to serve as the secure permanent capital for a formidable, advanced dynasty. The existence of this ancient population is deeply woven into the oldest oral traditions of the indigenous cultures native to the Southwest. The Hopi, Zuni, and Paiute peoples possess detailed histories regarding an ancient race of powerful, highly intelligent beings who occupied the canyons and constructed vast stone fortresses beneath the earth. According to Hopi cosmology, their ancestors emerged from a series of underground worlds, guided by spiritual entities through deep caverns that punctured the canyon floors. Paiute oral traditions explicitly describe a historical conflict with an unusually tall, red-haired population that held dominant control over the regional water sources and natural defensive strongholds. By treating these native histories as literal accounts of regional geopolitical shifts rather than abstract metaphors, the architectural and physical discoveries made by Jordan and Kincaid align perfectly with the deep historical memory of the American continent. With discoveries of this magnitude documented in the public press, why did the physical evidence seemingly vanish from the public eye overnight? Institutional storage and the archival veil. The rapid withdrawal of the Grand Canyon discovery from public discourse can be understood by examining the complex operational relationship between independent field explorers and major research institutions at the turn of the 20th century. During this era, the collection, cataloging, and public exhibition of national antiquities fell under a highly centralized framework. When an independent explorer like G.E. Kincaid or an academic researcher like Professor S.A. Jordan made a discovery that fundamentally challenged the established historical narrative of the continent, the standard operating procedure involved the immediate intervention of institutional authorities. The sheer volume of material reported, thousands of copper weapons, advanced hieroglyphic tablets, and hundreds of unique skeletal remains required immense logistical support to secure, transport, and catalog. Under the guise of national preservation and scientific standardization, these large-scale shipments were routinely transferred into deep subterranean repository vaults and high-security storage facilities, effectively removing them from public access while formal classification took place. This process of systematic intake and categorization meant that controversial artifacts were subject to strict institutional protocols. Within the vast basement networks of national museums and federal research centers, items deemed anomalous, or incompatible with the prevailing archaeological models of the time, were often assigned low-priority catalog designations or placed into indefinite storage. This archival veil allowed institutions to maintain a controlled, uniform presentation of history in their public exhibition halls, while avoiding the fierce academic debates and political complications that would arise from acknowledging an advanced, pre-Columbian global empire on American soil. Over decades, as institutional leadership shifted and paperwork was consolidated into restricted digital archives, the physical evidence of the Grand Canyon Citadel became buried beneath layers of bureaucratic classification, accessible only to individuals possessing top-level research clearances. Beyond the walls of urban research repositories, the physical site of the discovery itself became subject to an elaborate system of geographic and legal restrictions. As the 20th century progressed, vast swaths of the Grand Canyon were systematically partitioned into highly regulated zones under various federal designations, including national park boundaries, wilderness preservation areas, and restricted tribal reservation lands. Within these designated sectors, strict legal frameworks such as the Antiquities Act and subsequent cultural resource protection laws made independent exploration, excavation, or even casual hiking off designated trails strictly illegal without explicit, rarely granted federal permits. These legal barriers effectively closed the specific canyon walls described in the 1909 report to the general public, preventing independent researchers from conducting modern archaeological surveys of the hidden shelf. The geographic isolation of the region is further reinforced by modern technological and military overlays. Certain sectors of the Grand Canyon, particularly those adjacent to ancient Hopi salt trails and sacred indigenous geographic nodes, are protected by permanent no-fly zones and restricted military airspace, preventing low-altitude aerial mapping, satellite specialization, or drone-based LiDAR scanning by independent investigators. This overlapping network of legal prohibitions, physical barriers, and institutional data classification creates a permanent perimeter around the site. The strategic restriction of this landscape ensures that any remaining structural entrances, ventilation shafts, or rock-cut facades stay completely shielded from the modern world, preserving the secrets of the subterranean citadel beneath a double layer of stone and state security. The subterranean hydrology and geothermal nexus. To really comprehend how a massive subterranean population could survive indefinitely within the hyper-arid depths of the Grand Canyon, an investigation must look beyond the stone architecture and analyze the hidden hydrological networks of the region. The primary challenge for any large-scale civilization in the American Southwest is a permanent, reliable water supply. While the Colorado River flows through the canyon bottom, relying on it entirely would leave an underground citadel vulnerable to seasonal flooding, heavy silting, and strategic blockades. The builders of the citadel solved this existential problem by engineering their complex around deep, hidden limestone aquifers and subterranean thermal springs that flow through the Mississippian Redwall Limestone Formation. Geological surveys of the Grand Canyon confirm that the region sits atop a massive, complex karst landscape, a landscape characterized by thousands of unmapped caves, sinkholes, and deep underground rivers carved by dissolving limestone. The architectural records indicate that the lower tiers of the citadel breached these pristine, isolated water vaults. By cutting precise vertical shafts into these underground reservoirs, the ancient engineers created a highly secure, gravity-fed internal plumbing system. This design provided a continuous supply of naturally filtered, ice-cold water directly to the residential and agricultural zones of the complex, completely independent of surface weather patterns or river conditions. This engineering feat ensured total water security for tens of thousands of citizens. Furthermore, this subterranean water network provided a critical secondary benefit: structural climate control and energy management through a natural geothermal nexus. Deep within the canyon strata, certain fault lines intercept deep-seated thermal springs, where water is heated by the Earth's mantle before rising through the rock. The builders strategically routed these hot springs through specific floor channels in the lower residential quarters, creating a primitive yet highly effective radiant heating system. During the freezing desert winter nights, this thermal energy radiated upward through the stone floors, keeping the internal ambient temperature perfectly regulated without the need for burning timber or coal, which would have rapidly fouled the underground air supply. In the blistering heat of the summer months, the system could be reversed. By diverting the flow of ice-cold water from the higher aquifer vaults through those same floor channels, the citizens could effectively cool the entire subterranean grid. This mastery over subterranean thermodynamics and hydrology indicates that the citadel was not just a passive shelter, but a highly advanced, self-sustaining ecosystem. The ancient builders possessed an intimate, sophisticated understanding of the canyon's hidden geology, turning an otherwise inhospitable, sun-scorched desert abyss into a highly controlled, fully automated oasis capable of sustaining a flourishing civilization for generations. Are the answers hidden forever in deep basement vaults? Or do the canyon walls themselves still hold the final clues to this forgotten chapter? The unresolved horizon. The puzzle of the Grand Canyon Citadel stands as a monument to what lies beneath the forgotten layers of human history. The convergence of hand-hewn geometry, advanced metallurgy, and distinct osteological remains forms an interconnected narrative that cannot be easily dismissed. Every structural detail, from the vaulted arches engineered to distribute tectonic stress, to the convection-driven air shafts and geothermal hydrological networks, reveals a highly disciplined society that operated with absolute precision deep within the American interior. This subterranean empire did not merely survive within the desert landscape, they mastered it, turning a harsh geological chasm into a fully self-sustaining, high-tech oasis. When we look past the bureaucratic classification systems and examine the modern geographic landscape, it becomes clear that the canyon walls still protect this ancient legacy. The overlapping perimeters of federal land restrictions, permanent no-fly zones, and high-security institutional repositories have managed to keep the physical evidence shielded from the public eye. Yet, the architectural blueprint remains intact, locked within the hyper-dry limestone strata of the Southwest, perfectly preserved by the very stone environment built to sustain it. The physical reality of the site remains waiting just out of reach, protected by both legal boundaries and natural isolation. Ultimately, the trail of documentation left behind by early explorers challenges us to look at the ancient world through a broader, more interconnected lens. It forces a realization that our modern historical models may simply be sitting on top of a highly sophisticated global history that has been systematically forgotten or archived away. The Grand Canyon continues to hold its secrets, serving not just as a natural wonder of erosion and time, but as a vast, silent stone vault keeping watch over a brilliant, towering dynasty that time has tried to leave behind. The secrets buried beneath the Grand Canyon remind us that history is rarely set in stone. As modern exploration pushes deeper into the Earth's final frontiers, more anomalies are bound to surface, challenging everything we think we know about the ancient world. What will the deep archives reveal next? If you want to stay on the trail of history's greatest unsolved mysteries, make sure to subscribe for more content just like this.